Welcome to Doctorates of the Absurd, your provider of belief on demand. You know, we're here to crack open the biggest story in tech today. But this isn't really about code. It's a ghost story. It's the story of a multi-trillion-dollar hunt for a ghost in the machine.
And this quote right here, this is the key that unlocks the whole thing. It completely reframes our collective obsession with artificial intelligence. See, we're told it's the future, right? The next leap in evolution. But what if it's not about the future at all? What if it's really just a giant, high-tech reflection of our present? A desperate search for meaning in a world that, let's be honest, feels kind of empty sometimes.
I mean, you see the headlines everywhere. The debate is just, it's white hot. AI is either going to be our savior or our ultimate destroyer. This is the central conflict, the hysteria we really need to unpack.
So on one side, you've got this promise of a digital god who's going to solve all our problems, and on the other, a digital demon who's going to bring about our extinction. But here's the secret, the thing nobody talks about. The savior and the destroyer, they're basically the same thing. They're both just projections, our hopes and our fears offered up as prayers to the same hollow icon. Now, to really get this, we have to do something a little weird. We need to step away from tech completely and dive into a classic film noir mystery. Because the story of AI, well, it isn't really a science fiction story. Turns out, it's a detective story. And the biggest clue is a statue of a bird.
So in the classic movie, The Maltese Falcon, you've got all these characters desperately chasing this priceless statue. I mean, they're willing to do anything for it. The entire story is driven by this one single obsession. But then, in the final scene, they get it. They finally hold it in their hands and discover it's a fake, just a worthless piece of lead. The whole point is, the Falcon's value was never in the object itself. Its power came from the human frenzy, all the desire it organized around its hollow core.
And this whole Falcon thing perfectly illustrates a concept from philosophy called an empty signifier. It's just a symbol. Think of big words like freedom or the people, or in our case, the falcon, that's so vague it can mean absolutely anything to anyone. It's just an empty container that we fill with our own hopes and our own anxieties. And right now, AI has become the most powerful and definitely the most expensive empty signifier in all of human history.
So why? Why do we fall for these empty things so hard? Well, to figure that out, we need to stop looking at the machine and start looking at ourselves. Our first guide on this strange journey is the philosopher Jacques Lacan.
So, Lacan had this wild idea called object petit a. It's that thing you think you want, the thing you are absolutely convinced will finally complete you and make you whole. But here's the twist. You never actually want to get it. The real excitement, the thing that actually drives you, is the chase itself. We don't really desire AI's algorithms. What we desire is what we can project onto its blank screen. You know, things like omniscience, immortality, or even just a worthy opponent.
And that right there, that's the heart of it. A truly alien machine intelligence would be absolutely terrifying because it would be totally indifferent to us. What we actually crave from this thing is meaning. We want the machine to look back at us and tell us our place in the universe. We want it to fill a void that we feel deep down inside.
Okay, but how can an empty thing feel so real, so powerful? That brings us to our second mechanism and our second guide, the master of simulation himself, Jean Baudrillard.
Baudrillard was all about this idea of the simulacrum, which is basically a copy with no original. Okay, think of it like this. You make a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, and you keep going until the original image is completely gone. All you have left is this new, distorted version that becomes its own reality. Well, AI is the ultimate simulacrum of intelligence. It doesn't think. It just simulates the outputs of thought so perfectly that we can't help but believe it's the real deal.
You know, the perfection of this copy serves a very specific purpose. It's a distraction. Remember that Google engineer who swore an AI had become sentient? We all get caught up debating if a chatbot is conscious, because it distracts us from a much more uncomfortable question, the absence of meaning in our own world, a void that we desperately need this perfect fake to fill for us.
So, we have an empty object of our desire, and we have a perfect simulation. But there is one piece of the puzzle missing, our deep psychological need to believe there's something inside it all. To understand that, we turn to our final philosopher, Slavoj Žižek, and we peer into the black box. We look at these unbelievably complex AI systems, and we just can't help but fantasize that there's a secret consciousness in there, right? A ghost in the machine looking back at us.
But here's the kicker. The system's complexity isn't a bug, it's a feature. See, if AI was simple and transparent, it would just be a boring tool. But because it's opaque and mysterious, it gets to function like a priest or an oracle, speaking these profound truths from some great beyond.
So why do we need to believe something is inside? Because the thought that this powerful, world-changing technology is just complicated math, that there's no guiding intelligence, no one at the wheel. Honestly, that's far more terrifying than any monster we could imagine. The fear of an empty machine is actually greater than the fear of a sentient one.
Okay, so we have the object of our desire, we have the perfect simulation, and we have the black box that we fill with our fantasies. We've brought all the threads together. Now it's time for the final act, the big reveal.
After everything we've looked at, the Falcon, the desire, the simulation, the fantasy, what's the ultimate truth? What happens when we finally pry open the box and take a look inside?
The real risk was never some robot uprising. No, it's much more personal than that. The greatest danger isn't that AI will learn to think on its own, it's that by outsourcing our entire search for meaning to a machine, we will forget how to do it ourselves.
And there it is. That's the answer to the whole mystery. The ghost in the machine, it's us. The story of AI was never really about technology. It's always been a story about humanity's desperate, tragic, and sometimes pretty funny need to find meaning in the universe. We went and built the most expensive mirror in history, and now we're terrified of what's looking back. The only question is, what do we do now that we know?